Okay, we are back with another fill-in video. Just a few short verses to get us from where we were last week to where we're going. And it kind of puts a cap on Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. I didn't finish what is normally a little section here from in chapter 19, verses 41 to 44. They're usually included together. I broke in the middle, and that's because verse 43, where we're going to start today, it sort of introduces a new idea, and so I felt like there was a breaking point there, and we'd save that part for this video. So Jesus is riding into Jerusalem. He weeps over Jerusalem because they didn't receive him, and we talked about that on Sunday. But that's where we pick up in verse 43, right in the middle of that. He says, he just said, "But now they're hidden from your eyes." Verse 43, "For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you, and close you in on every side, and level you, and your children within you to the ground. And they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation." And so while Jesus makes this prophecy over Jerusalem, and while you certainly can see a figurative meaning here, or metaphorical meaning in a way, it is generally considered without question that Jesus is specifically prophesying the destruction that's going to happen to Jerusalem beginning in 70 AD at the hands of the Roman government. And it describes it almost perfectly what happened. The Romans came in and laid siege to the city, which means to completely surround it and choke out what the people need to survive. And so you basically surround the city and you shut down the food supply and the water supply, and people inside starve to death. And there are horrific stories of when this happened from within Jerusalem, what people were doing in order to survive cannibalism and all kinds of things. And eventually the Romans destroyed the entire city, destroyed the temple, and exactly what Jesus said was going to happen happened. Now, why did that happen? It is, according to Jesus, very clearly, God removed his protection from Jerusalem because of their rejection of him as Messiah, and it happened just like he said it would. So Jesus enters into the city, he laments over the city and the decision that they as a nation have made as a whole to reject him, even though many people received him. As a whole, they rejected him. So he laments and comes into the city again as a king. And the first thing traditionally that would happen when a king came home from war or whatever, now they'd be coming in on the war horse instead of a donkey. But when they came in, the first thing they would do is go to the temple and they would make a sacrifice to thank God. And this was true in other societies as well. They would go to their place of worship to thank whatever gods that were that they served and followed. And so that was traditional to do. And so Jesus, interestingly, does the same thing. Now, he typically goes to the temple or the synagogue first when he enters into a town. But in this case, it's particularly symbolic. So, and he does not like what he sees. Verse 45. "Then he went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in it, saying to them, 'It is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves.'" So this is a wild scene. And for some people, this is their favorite kind of Jesus. I know I've heard people say that before, the Jesus that's flipping over tables and all. It's fair, he did it, but also it was uncommon for him to behave this way. So let's not make too much of it. He's making a very specific point. And interestingly, and I've found in ministry that many people don't know this, Jesus cleansed the temple twice. John records Jesus cleansing the temple early in his ministry, right after his very first miracle, when he turns water into wine, or if you're in our children's program, water into special drink. So right after the wedding at Cana, he goes and he cleanses the temple. And John's the one who records the detail of Jesus literally like weaving the whip together to drive them out. And Matthew, Mark, or Luke, they don't record that one, but that was at the beginning of the ministry. So I think that's interesting. We have bookends here in a way. Early in his ministry, he cleanses the temple. They should have learned. They should have changed. They should have responded to this. He quotes the exact same passages from Isaiah and from Jeremiah in what John records in John chapter 2. And now later, at the end of his earthly ministry, right before the Holy Week and right before his crucifixion, his resurrection, he goes and he cleanses the temple again. No mention of whips this time, just flipping over of tables, but Matthew, Mark, and Luke all record this. And he says exactly the same thing. And it is proof that they have not learned and they have not listened. All right, verse 47. And he was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests, the scribes, and the leaders of the people sought to destroy him and were unable to do anything, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. They wanted to get him so bad. And John also tells us, that they really wanted to arrest Jesus and have him killed, but they did not want to do it on the Passover. They wanted to wait till after the Passover, because they couldn't do it before the Passover, but God had other plans, and so it happened on the Passover. And we're getting there soon enough. All right, that brings us up to chapter 20, which is where we're going to pick up on Sunday. See you then.